I call the Maplewood City Council work session to order on October 11th, 2022. Mr. Reese, roll call, please.
Councilmember Crossley,
Here.
Councilmember Fockingham,
Here.
Councilmember Homer,
Here.
Mayor Knapper,
Here.
Councilmember Page,
Here.
Councilmember Phillips.
Here.
Mayor Knapper, we have a forum.
Thank you. There's no need for item 3. So we will go to item 4. Mr. Reese?
Yes, so this evening, the first item, substantive item on the agenda is to discuss the Maplewood Community Growth Fund Foundation bylaws. And to walk us through a summary is Mr. Josh Crea, who is the president of the Human Services Commission. Welcome to the program, Josh.
Thanks.
Yes, gotta hold it, please.
Hello.
Welcome.
Yes, please.
Go.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Josh Crea. I'm the, I don't remember the term if I'm chair or president of
President.
of the Human Services Commission. And yeah, I'm here to briefly present and field any questions along with Jackie about the Maplewood Community Growth Fund Foundation bylaws. We as a commission are charged to advise the mayor and the council in relationship to issues in our community, particularly those sorts of issues that deal with things like the unhoused, food insecurity, those that need help, the most help. But in connection with that, we've also been charged and have been working on developing a foundation to sort of further help members of our community. We drafted those bylaws, have spent quite a bit of time on them, and with the help of Jackie, we were able to get them to where they are today. The foundation is intended essentially to better and further service financially individuals within our community that need that help. We already have some of those elements that exist in the city. For instance, Public Works works with block grants to help individuals with home repairs, for instance. We have other initiatives that are sort of already exist here in the city or through the city. But we're just going to provide another means to do that. So more directly. So the foundation is going to essentially be set up once we have it approved and we have a board elected and selected. They will come up with their own process of how they want to take applications, how they want to vet those, and then how they will sort of appropriate those funds or resources to individuals in the city. I think I'll take any questions if there are any.
I have a quick question. So I think these are very robust. So kudos. I think, and I brought this up the first time, one of the first times we talked about this many months ago. And I think there's an opportunity to strike a balance between the flexibility of a nonprofit and the transparency that a government brings with public records, required reporting, that type of thing. I don't know if the bylaws are ultimately the place to put that, or this is a partial question to the city as well of how this foundation gets set up if we're passing an ordinance or something like that. But I would like to see some like codified reporting requirements about, and it doesn't need to be personal information, definitely not asking for that, but more of like the activities of the body and funds dispersed and that type of thing.
Well, I can speak to one part that's actually, and I believe it's in the bylaws, or the draft of the bylaws. That once the board is created, they will create their own code of ethics. And so I think that's going to really hammer home that in conjunction with the city and with council, they're going to decide how that works and how it's best transparent. And that's part of also the application process, right? How do we distinguish that from other application processes that exist already through the city, through the county, through what other means? And that's something that we as the commission are very invested in, sort of making sure that we understand exactly how that works and that process is written out verbatim and it's upheld.
Thank y'all so much. Mr. Reese, do you want to address next steps?
Sure, I was planning on doing that, Mayor.
Thank you.
So Mayor and Council, obviously there's tonight's meeting. Some next steps, whenever the Human Services Commission and the council are ready to proceed, you will need to form the foundation by filing articles of incorporation with the Missouri Secretary of State. I recommend that we use City Attorney Graves to serve as the incorporator and to coordinate the logistics of this filing. This is a fairly easy process to do. Right after that, or on a parallel track, I don't know if it's parallel or right after that, you can let me know, City Attorney Graves, but the Council and Human Services Commission will need to appoint the directors for the foundation in accordance with Section 2 of the bylaws. Obviously, I think 4 of the 7 members are appointed by the council and 3 by the Human Services Commission. We have a process in place where we schedule a work session, and we'll have to do that far enough in advance where we can allow for applicants to apply and for our process and all that. So that would be how we proceed. After the filing and the appointments, the incorporator will, City Attorney Graves will need to sign a resolution recognizing the directors appointed by the Human Services Commission and the council. Then the directors would need to adopt the bylaws and appoint officers. At this point, City Attorney Graves' role as incorporator would be complete. After the foundation is formed, they'll need to apply for tax exempt status with the IRS as a 501c3. And as a reminder, the city did budget for the fee associated with the tax exempt application. So those are some next steps.
So I believe the Human Services Commission is ready. As far as the council, what are our next steps as far as letting, I guess, just showing that we are indeed ready? Do we need to put this on an agenda for a general meeting?
Yeah, it's my understanding there is no formal action by city council. Is that right, City Attorney Graves?
Correct, not unless you want to have it. When you apply. The only thing required is the appointment.
So council, can we talk about this now and figure out if we are ready to move forward with it?
Has there been some other time where we've kind of given this our blessing, or is this the opportunity to do so? What I mean is like official.
Well, I think this is as official as it gets, just based off of what Michael just said, but I mean, I don't want to delay things. So this is more of like a side thing, but like a resolution stating our intent and like our support could be meaningful, right?
It's kind of what I was thinking. It doesn't have to wait on any other action, does it? I mean, we can, or nothing else needs to wait on us doing a resolution because it's not required. It would just be kind of a nicety.
So would you all like for the resolution to happen before the filing?
Doesn't sound like it has to, right?
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
If we're trying to get it going, wait right on us. Then we'd be talking our next meeting. That's 2 more weeks and now, yeah.
No, yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you.
I just have a quick question related to the bylaws. And again, it may not be something that's happening right now, but just for future. Under the Board of Directors, Article 2, it's the item number 2 under the Board of Directors may select and remove all officers, et cetera. Number 2 was fix their compensation. So to me, that indicates that we would plan on having employees of this, and I just wanted to see what the intent was.
So that's for, or Josh, do you want to? Okay, so. Reasonable compensation for services by the board. That means that they wanted to hire an executive director for the foundation, then it specifies who to be part of the compensation.
And so just for clarification purposes for the community, is there an intent to hire an executive director, or is this going to be run solely by the Board of Directors? Okay, thank you.
So can I get clarification? Is the council's desire to have a resolution for the next meeting?
Yes.
Yeah.
However, you don't have, you can file now.
Okay, we can we can move on a parallel track.
Yes,
Moving forward with the filing.
yes, yep,
And the resolution would basically express city council's support for the foundation bylaws.
yes.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank y'all. Thank you. All right, Mr. Reese, item number 5.
Yes. As soon as I get to, lost my agenda, lost my place. Okay, item number 5, excuse me. Mayor and council is our public forum.
At this time, members of the community that have joined us, you're welcome to step to the podium and make a public comment. And if you've joined us via Zoom, please raise your Zoom hand and Mr. Reese will call upon you. When you step up to the podium, make sure that you hold the button down the entire time you speak. I know it's cumbersome, but it's a nice little workout for your fingers. So there you go.
Just giving it a moment.
What do you want to hear?
Whatever.
Want specifically in relation to what was just presented?
No, anything you want, anything you want.
And the button, I'm not used to being on this end of it. Gotcha.
Pickett Lima, 7357 Elm, I'm here in Maplewood. I'm here actually to ask questions and follow up on some limited information that I've been able to perceive regarding the longer term rental of houses in our community. And I want to congratulate whoever it was that put forth to limit 30 days without owners present as the maximum. I'm relieved to hear that. Having been a resident here off different times, I lived out of the country a while, but I was raised here and I've lived here off and on for 50 years or plus. Far too many probably. But in any case, I would like to have some questions answered if I could about how I was just jotting this down because I wasn't expecting to have this opportunity this quickly. I was wondering about the transparency to the city of who is occupying properties, especially when owners are not available to give information to law enforcement or fire or any of our services, should that be needed. Clearly, there's records of who owns a home, and I know the services of our Pine Police Department has always been very helpful when maybe you don't know a neighbor or you don't know where to find something, or one time there were raccoons coming in an empty house across the way. At that point, I wasn't sure who owned it. And they helped contact who owned the place to keep a whole family of raccoons from tearing it up too bad. But basically, I was wondering if is there a paperwork process? Is there a way that is readily available to our services when especially an owner would not be present? I've got to tell you, I'm very concerned about properties without owner presence in the city. I mean, I know folks have to go to the grocery store or things like that, but we've gone through times in Vietnam, we had kids, even with parents in the house, where young people were taking off and not going home to their own house and occupying one of my neighbor's houses, and it was an ongoing battle for a long time. And it's with residents from within the community, kids that went to our high school. But I am concerned about something published in an Airbnb site or so forth with that kind of length where eyes would be on, oh, here's a spot, let's find our opportunity. We can slide in the for more nefarious kinds of activities. But at the very least, I would like to hope that we have a way for our folks here who are running things and helping take care of all of us to readily know who is who and where is where in terms of if there is any situation, which I understand we've already had some in the community, different places, not in my block yet. And I'd also like to know about how homeowners are held accountable for things that go on their property. I don't know if the laws are the same, but we used to take over houses where drug activity was found. And our homeowners would lose their property because of such kind of activity. And I don't know if there's laws on the books like that anymore. I know we have some public parks where houses in fact were torn down because the city or state or however that worked took over the property because it was a drug house. So those would be my off the top concerns that I'd share with you. And yeah, my concern that we will go this far. I have family in Kirkwood where people snowbird into someplace in the winter, go to Florida. After the year, they do it regularly. They have one for this a person who comes and stays in their house, takes care of the dog or whatever. And that's done on the kind of down low. So that it's not published somewhere that people are coming in and out. It isn't a public knowledge kind of thing. And it's certainly not open to anybody who want to have come into the house. And neighbors are always try to have an eye on things. Also, when they know what's going on. As a neighbor, I'd like to know if my neighbors are going to be gone after a year or however, and if for 30 days of that, if there's going to be people in there that I don't even know. I don't know if they're staying there, if they're robbing a place or whatever's going on. So in any case, I'm anxious that there be a lot of transparency about how the, a lot of times the devil's in the details. And so I'd like to put forth that it would be great to see how this is going to be managed, because we've worked so hard over the years to get a good name to our community. We've had a bad name for many years in years past, much because of property going downhill, misuse of properties, and violence kinds of activity in some of the homes. So I appreciate your time and attention.
Thank you. And let me just make sure before you leave, I wrote down, I have two questions. Was there a third? The first wasn't really a question. It was, you'd like to hear some discussion on the transparency to the city of who is occupying the residence. So when they're renting it through Airbnb, you'd like to know who is renting it.
Who and when and those kinds of things.
Okay, and then the second item that I have is a question, how are homeowners held accountable? Was there a third question?
Well, I think that.
I think I included another piece in there in terms of how the neighborhood knows, how the neighbors know. If there's anything to know, it's just helpful to know. I mean, I notice if in the houses around my house, if somebody's going in and out that I don't recognize, and if I don't see the owner walk also in and out, I'm assuming they're guests and so forth, that's great, fine. But we look out for one another, and we probably need to really support the neighbors to do that too.
Okay, thank you very much. And I will make sure to address those, or at least direct them to be addressed when we get to that. Thank you. Any online? You're welcome to step to the podium.
I'm Gretchen Patterson, 7623 Weaver. I was here earlier in the summer about the Airbnbs, and I was just wondering what all they were deciding, how they're going to be monitored. I don't want to have a party house like we had a long time ago, it was they park in our driveway. We couldn't get out or never anything. So I'd like to know how they're going to restrict the places so that their neighbors won't have to be bothered by that. And two, like Pickett said, we don't want Maplewood to go down. I've lived there all my life and it was an area where it was Maplewood. It was bad and now it's wonderful. Everybody wants to come here and I don't want it to go down again. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have no hands, so.
Thank you. All right, then we'll move on to item number 6.
Yes, so we have Sutton New Park, and may I proceed?
Yes, please.
Okay, so we have a number of items here to go through between Matt Nyber and myself, Acting Chief Nyber, and I want to cover some items. So I'm going to make some introductory comments before I turn it over to him. Public safety and communicating with and listening to the public are our top priorities when it comes to the Sutton Loop Park issues that we will be discussing this evening. I've been meeting with Acting Chief Nyber, Matt Nyber, several times per week on these Sutton Loop Park issues for the last 2.5 months. Furthermore, we've been meeting as a team, he and I, with his community resource officers to discuss the status of things at the park. We have seen great improvement at Sutton Loop Park due to the city's involvement and cooperation of the community. I'm going to turn it over to Acting Chief Matt Nyber for him to elaborate. He and his team of community resource officers have been interacting with the community for a couple of months now and have been real leaders on this issue. I do want to point out that he and I are both very accessible for people here in person and listening on Zoom. You can call or email us for questions, comments, or to share your concerns. Call Matt at 314-646-3621. That's 314-646-3621. Or email him at m-nyber@cityofmaplewood.com. Or you can call me at 314-646-3603. Or feel free to email me at m-reese, that's REESE, @cityofmaplewood.com. So with that, we're going to go back and forth a little bit here, but I'm going to turn it over to Acting Chief Nyber to get into some of the issues regarding park safety and enforcement of illegal behavior.
You want me up here? I got pretty loud voice.
What would the council like? Yeah.
Up here.
Yeah, just for Zoom, really. Thank you.
Okay, I'll echo what the city manager said. The safety of our residents, visitors, homeowners and guests are a top priority. However, I want everybody to understand that our officers will display a reverence for the legal rights of all citizens and the law itself. So I hope everybody understands that. I feel that a lot of phone calls and city manager did about concerns. We understand those concerns. I can confirm there was a registered sex offender at the Sutton Loop Park. We were monitoring that situation. On September 25th, this individual went to Kellogg Park where he's in violation of his sex offender. He was charged through the St. Louis County Prosecuting Attorney's Office with a sex offender physically present loitering within 500 feet of Parkwood Playground, Wood Museum. It's a Class E felony. This individual is currently in custody today on no bond and waiting his hearings. So I wanted to update you on this individual. I also want to read the Missouri state statute because there's a lot of phone calls and questions. Why couldn't the police interfere with this individual at Sutton Loop Park? So I want to read the state statute on that so you all understand, the public understands. Again, I'm going to echo what I said. We have a reverence for the law itself and all citizens have rights. Okay. So this is what the state law reads in reference to this. shall not knowingly be present and or loiter within 500 feet of any real property comprising any public park with playground equipment, a public swimming pool, athletic complex, or athletic fields if such facilities exist for the primary use of recreation for children. Any museum if such museum holds itself out to the public as and exists with the primary purpose of entertaining or educating children under 18 years of age, or Missouri Department of Conservation Nature or Education Center properties. This individual was at that park and was not violating any law at that time. When he did enter another park that met with this law, he was taken into custody and charges were proper formally.
Sure. So just under the issue related to the potential park changes and or park definition changes, I want to kind of give my view on this, and I'm still listening to the community, and the members of council have thoughts. I'm very open to listening. You know, I fell in love with Sutton Loop Park from the very beginning when I first came to Maplewood. It's a beautiful and very unique park. One of the reasons I think it's so great is it has a wonderful green space that is open for all to enjoy. It's my understanding that when Sutton Loop was established in 2011, this is how the community and city leadership wanted it. And I think they demonstrated great foresight in structuring the park in this manner. I frequent the park several times per week. Over the last week, I've seen little boys playing with toy air rockets, adults sitting on blankets, people doing yoga, kids playing catch with a frisbee and throwing a frisbee to their dog, others walking the grass, little boys and girls playing during the regional night out activities at Sutton Loop Park. So, you know, that's amazing to see in that green space. It's open to all. As for the use of the pavilion by the unhoused and those that use the pantry, things have gotten better. The registered sex offender was arrested. 2 other individuals were ejected from the park for bad behavior. The police department has asked that those who are occupying space under the pavilion be mindful of others that would also like to use the space. Acting Chief Matt Niver will speak a little bit more about this in just a moment. But we're asking those that are under the pavilion to be mindful of others that want to use the space. As for putting some type of playground in the Sutton Loop Park, we understand from some initial feedback that it would need to be something pretty substantial in order to meet the state definition of a playground. It is my preference at this point to not add a playground structure in Sutton Loop Park. This is something that I would categorize as a last resort option, something we only do if we absolutely have to in order to protect the public. So that's kind of my position at this point in time, sort of a last resort. Things have improved dramatically at Sutton Loop Park. As I said, I go over there frequently, and it's a park really for everyone to enjoy. If the mayor and council agree, one thing we can do is write a letter to our state legislators, asking them to change the definition of a park. I know sometimes that can be a slow process, but we can ask them to change the definition of a park in the state statute, and why this will help make the city of Maplewood and other cities safer. So at this point, we'll keep our options open. I'll continue to listen to the community on this issue. That's kind of where we stand on that. If it's okay with members of council, we're going to proceed to talk about a few other items, and go ahead, Matt.
All right, thank you. So what are we gonna do in the future? And realize these ordinances have always been in place, but we're gonna start monitoring more strictly for drinking alcoholic beverages in the parks. However, there is a caveat to that. If you have a permit, that is allowed, and that's through the city of Maplewood. So we'll be monitoring that. We'll also be monitoring the overnight hours. Park hours are from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. In the last 2 weeks, officers have been checking that, and there's been 1 warning for alcohol consumption. So there's been 1 warning for that, but no other violations. My officers have not found anybody sleeping in the parks during those hours or anybody consuming alcoholic beverages without permits. And then lastly is the city manager alluded here. there are two individuals that were causing disturbances at the park. This goes for all citizens. If we do find someone is causing, tumultuous or volatile behavior, the Director of Public Works will issue a trespass warning, and then we will coordinate from there. If they violate that, then we'll go through the City of Maplewood prosecuting attorney for possible charges. So that's our future there, what we'll be doing with our parks. As the city manager also, we've also had conversations, realize our community resource officer unit meets with all members of the community. I want to specifically say that all members are meet with. So they're there at the parks every day or every other day, talking to any individual in the park. We have had discussions with those occupying the pavilion. That's been a concern, that the space has been limited because sometimes items are strewn about over the benches there. So we've had discussions, and the individuals at the park were very receptive to that. We share the concerns of the community that other people can't share that pavilion or the benches. Very receptive and understood, that so they'll be addressing that. And it appears that our conversations have worked for that recently, checking the parks the past few weeks. So that's all I have.
The last item, and then we can open it up for questions or comments. The last item I just want to speak to under this category of Sutton Loop Park is the pantry permit update. So just for everyone's knowledge here, we have four public pantries in the city of Maplewood: Sutton Loop Park, Maplewood Public Library, Kellogg Park, and the Yale Bus Stop. I think the pantries are beneficial because they serve people in need, both during the height of COVID and now as COVID still lingers and during a tough economy. On August 19th, our Public Works Director reissued a permit to Maplewood as the pantries met our city code requirements and are in good condition for our food pantry ordinance. We will inspect them again in 6 months as required. So February 19th of 2023 is about when that will happen. 6 months after they were reissued a permit on August 19th. So the pantries are well managed and maintained by Maplewood. And that's where we stand on the issue of the Sutton Loop Park pantries. Happy to answer any questions at this point in time.
I have a comment and a question. First, I just want to say thanks to both of you for your level of attention to this. I heard from lots of constituents. And I think I appreciate, and I know people appreciated that both of you were taking calls. Not a lot of places you can get a call back from the police chief and the city manager, so I appreciate that. Question that I had is about the school bus stop at Hazel and Sutton. I had this question, I read the statute, that's still unclear to me. So does a school bus stop, is that an extension of school property for conveyance to and from public school? Could you comment on that?
Council member, that's a great question. We checked with the prosecutors on that, who looked at that and could not find a violation of that restriction. So there was no violation of that, and it did not. Now, if there's something in place by a judge on certain offenders, that could be in their probation or their probation paperwork that they're not allowed, but with this individual, that did not meet the criteria.
Thank you.
I do not have a question, but a couple of things I want to say. And first and foremost is to thank the two of you. I think it's important that we solve for compassion, and you two have consistently done that, and I'm very grateful for that. On the pantry issue, I've stated this to Maplewood, but I want to get this on the record. I want to continue my commitment publicly, personally, financially to the food pantries. They do provide a service that is, I think, vital, that reflects who we are as people. And I think they could all benefit from more donations at this time. So if you've got time, I think there's some sales at Schnucks. So please take advantage of those and donate to your local pantries.
I just want to make a statement also on the pantries. I think there's some confusion in our community about the pantry that's at the Sutton Loop Pavilion and whether it'll be removed by the city. It will not. as Mr. Reese has already explained, there is a proper permit on file for that pantry. And so what I would suggest to community members that would like to see that pantry moved, talk to Maple Good, because Maple Good is made up of the community. And so that's a conversation that needs to be had. The analogy that I have is by family, like that's a conversation that needs to be had in-house by family, and family being Maple Good. So have that conversation there, because the city has done everything that it needs to do, which is that permit process. So the permit's in place, the pantry can stay there. If community members would like to see it moved, then please make sure that you're communicating with your neighbors in Maple Good about that. I just wanted to make that clear. Thank you.
Just a couple of comments first, piling on the thanks for Michael and Matt, and certainly our community resource officers that I know are really that front line with our community members who are experiencing homelessness. I'd also like to reiterate my support for the food pantry, particularly this one, but all of the food pantries that are on our public property in Maplewood. I think they are doing a great job. And finally, if we can proceed with a request from the state legislature, I think that would be a positive thing, not just for our community, but for all communities in our situation. I do remember when the Sutton Loop Park was created, and it was specifically created as a green space. And like you, Mr. Reese, I thoroughly enjoy that aspect of the park, and I wouldn't want to see it changed in any great sense. However, if we do have an opportunity, and this may be an opportunity for future, if we can create some sort of public art as part of that playground, something along the lines of the Turtle Park, the Bob Castle sculptures that are public art as well as being playground space. I just want to put that out there. I think that would be an addition that could still maintain the green space, particularly if we're thinking about the snakes that Bob Castle sculpted, doing that as a perimeter to the park. Don't know if it would still meet the definition of a playground, but that would be something I would love to see our community investigate for future. And that's it.
I'd like to add my words to the question. Thank you. So thank you. I'm also very proud to live in a community that has this, and I think it's wonderful. I people support it. I do want to just represent that voice, though, that certainly have had a lot of residents come up to me and just thoughtful about the wisdom of having it in a park. It's becoming an area where people are congregating. We're not resourcing it as a shelter. It's not set up for that. So I assume when they re-up permits, that's something that we think about is, is the location appropriate and all that kind of thing. I just think it's something we need to keep our eyes on. There's definitely people that I have yet to meet anybody that's not supportive of the idea. Just want to keep our eyes on the wisdom of where we have them and have an open mind about, is a heavily used park appropriate.
Yeah, the staff second everything everybody said. You guys have done a great job. Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate that the incident happened, but since that park has been created, I can't remember any other instance like this. And you guys handled it very well. So, and the food pantry, I completely agree again that we should have them. And placement, I'm not a pro. I'll leave that to Maple Good and apply for their permits. But yeah, no, I think you guys handled it well, and as long as we stay on top of it, I can't imagine it being an issue again. So, thanks.
I do think the letter is a good idea, so I don't know if we need to discuss that more as a group and make a decision now, but I do want to say that I think that's a good path for us to consider.
That's something I'm prepared to move forward with. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Reese, item number 7.
Yes. So our last substantive item here is the short-term vacation rental ordinance. I'm going to have Anthony Traxler help me with this item. So just to summarize, the ordinance here, reading from the memo that I issued to council members. In an attempt to address the concerns of some council members, the proposed ordinance has been modified. Under the previous draft, the homeowner was required to spend a night on site for at least 9 months of each short-term vacation rental permit year, but would be able to rent the property without remaining on site overnight. In the new draft, the owner would be permitted to rent the property without remaining on site, but for only up to 30 days per year. All further rentals would require that the owner remain on site overnight. So that's kind of a summary of the changes of the new ordinance. Furthermore, I want to point out, reading off something I prepared here, from an administrative perspective, and this kind of gets to maybe a little bit of a proactive enforcement measure. From an administrative perspective, we will require the owner to attest in their permit application that he or she understands and agrees that the total number of days per year for which they may rent their property without spending the night is 30 days. For a violation of this requirement, a permit may be revoked pursuant to section 14-805H, which provides any false statements or false information provided in the application for a short-term vacation rental permit shall be grounds for denial of permit revocation, or imposition of penalties as outlined in this code of ordinances. So we will require this from an administrative perspective. I don't know if you want us to try to address the comments that were made earlier now. Okay, Anthony, can you mind stepping up to the podium? Can you try to address the process as it relates to just the process and transparency and how it works and that kind of thing?
Sure. So many of you are aware because you've approved conditional use permit for a short-term vacation rental. They're allowed in the single-family residential district or limited residential district, but it has to be a single-family home right now. It needs to be owner-occupied and they need to be present, no more than 2 rooms. So we're going to tweak that for the 30 days we talked about and allow the entire house for 30 days. But as part of that process, they need to go through a conditional use permit process. And they've got to meet several standards, which are listed in the city code, and we read the findings of fact. In addition to that, whether it be the planning commission can make recommendations, staff can make recommendations, or the council can add additional conditions or restrictions on that property, depending on the nature of the property, to make it even less impactful to adjacent property owners. So right now, I think there was some question previously about what would happen if maybe somebody violated the conditional use regulations. What is the city's options to either bring it into conformance or revoke the conditional use permit and short-term vacation rental? What happened there is we would start the process administratively with notification, whether it be letters or phone calls, and try to make sure if there's violations, we would try to work with that property owner. If that didn't work, either the zoning administrator, which would be myself, the planning commission, or the city council can recommend a revocation of a conditional use permit. It's a very lengthy process, but it's a process that would ultimately be up to the city council. So if there is a question, that can be the case. We have not had that problem. We have not had anything even close of note, and we've had this in place for many, many years. For the most part, people comply, although as the city attorney can attest, we do occasionally have to issue summons for some people that don't respond whenever they're having an illegal condition, or pardon me, an illegal short-term vacation rental. I believe Ms. Lima, her comment was, would we know, how would we know who's there and who's on site? As part of the business license process,
They have to give the city clerk, Karen Scheid, all of their contact information. They also have to give emergency contact information. So if we needed to contact the property owner at any time, we have that. That's part of our business license process. We wouldn't know exactly who's on site immediately during the actual stay, but the owner is required to keep a log and a journal to show who is there and contact information. So we wouldn't be able to call that person directly renting the place that night, but we could call the owner and get that information from the owner so we could contact the person eventually. And I apologize, Pickett, I can't remember what the third question was.
I have them.
Oh, thank you.
You're no problem. So you just addressed the transparency to the city of who is occupying the residence. You addressed the restrictions. And no, you addressed how are homeowners held accountable? And then how would neighbors know?
Yeah, so there's also a requirement for a small posting out on the window, which they could look for. It's kind of inconspicuous. It's very small. I think it's a square foot. But it's public record. If the neighbors, I mean, anything within the business license file, if the neighbors wanted to know, anything in the business license file is public record. And if the planning committee, or if the city council wants to make that notification or put that in a conditional use ordinance, that if they want to let us know what that 30 days is, which city manager Reese mentioned, they're going to attest that these are the 30 days they're going to have this place. They're going to be essentially off premise. We could put an additional condition in the conditional use ordinance, which would say they need to go ahead and notify the city who that is. That could address Ms. Lama's concerns. So then we wouldn't have to go through the owner first to try to track down who's holding that stay. So we can put that additional condition in the ordinance, meaning the conditional use ordinance, or simplify it if that's something that the council's concerned about.
With the conditional use permit process, if, let's say I'm on Marietta and I would like to get a conditional use permit, and I am going to go through the steps to do that, my neighbors on the street get notice of this proceeding, correct?
That's correct. We post the property itself. We advertise in a newspaper of general circulation, and we also mail a public hearing notice that notifies when the planning commission is going to be hearing this process and when the city council is going to hold the public hearing. We send that notice out to adjacent property owners and tenants or renters within 300 feet of your property.
All right. And so with that notice, my neighbor could come to council during that public comment section and say, here are my objections to this. We don't want this, or I don't want this on my street, correct?
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you.
Pardon my ignorance, can we just clarify, sorry, over here, so if somebody's interested in doing this 30-day rental, let's say they're gonna be out of town in the fall, in January, they can come in and do a conditional use request and we pass it. But we don't know the particulars yet. Would that be true? Or is the conditional use permit based on the particulars of who they're renting to?
No, it's based on the space itself.
Just the space, okay.
Yes.
And it's just for the year, or is that, how long does that stand for?
Conditional use process, once it's approved, we don't go through that process annually. However, as part of an Airbnb, it's treated like any other business in town, and we require them to have an annual renewal of their business license, which also necessitates an inspection of the property annually.
Great, thanks.
The last question was, what are the restrictions? You think you can cover that?
We have an actual ordinance. It's probably 2 pages long. I mean, there's a long list of restrictions. We can, staff can send that out to the council. But some of the ones that are unique to Maplewood, there's no question our ordinance is more restrictive than many. Would be owner occupied, no more than 2 rooms. And you must have off-street parking available. So you do need to provide some parking. We don't get into how many spaces. We just say you have to have off-street parking. Those are really the only unique to Maplewood. And there's also posting requirements, a log or a ledger of who is staying there, and simple issues. We haven't had to request that from anybody because we haven't had too many problems. The real problem is finding these. And we actually pay a service annually to do so. I just got a report for September. I believe we had 9 out there. 4 of them were illegal. We sent notice out to those 4. I've had 1 person contact me. We'll continue to send the notice. And if we need to, we would take action through our city attorney, but we try to do that administratively and, through kinder, gentler approaches at first.
Can you tell us, I want to give the example of a violation of a noise ordinance because that seems to be a huge concern. So if someone leaves, they're using their house as the Airbnb for those 30 days and a neighbor calls and says, there's an issue with noise, they're being extremely loud. Our police come out, issue a citation for violation of the noise ordinance. What happens? What is the penalty to the homeowner, if there is one?
I would probably defer to the chief here, Matt, if that's the case. I would assume it would be for the actual person committing the noise. Is that accurate, Matt?
Yes, and we'd have to work with our city prosecutor on that to present that case to the city prosecutor.
Okay, but would that trigger the restrict, you understand where I'm going with this? Thank you.
Provision within the regulations that Anthony mentioned, in section 14.802, and it's subsection M.
Thank you, girl.
I know you can't hear me. It's in subsection M, and it specifically requires that the homeowner be available to respond to complaints very quickly. And it says that if the homeowner failure of the owner or the local contact to respond to calls for complaints regarding the condition, operation, and conduct of the occupants and or guests in a timely and appropriate manner shall be grounds for revocation of the permit and shall subject the owner to all administrative, legal, and equitable remedies available to the city. So that's currently in the code already.
Thank you. All right.
And this 30 days is, it's not consecutive. I could take 15 weekends, right? I could rent it out without me being there for a total of 30 days. Correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Are there any other questions?
Is there any way possible that the city can and would be able to monitor the amount of time that someone is renting out their house without barring any complaints? So you rent your house as an Airbnb, your neighbors don't complain, they don't notice, whatever. Is there any way for the city to track that or monitor it?
That would be difficult. We'd pretty much have to take their word for it. And we would make them attest to that as part of the process.
What's the current staff investment for this effort? Like how many people are working on it? I'm assuming no one's doing this full time.
Oh, no, we handle it. My assistant director of public works, Tiffany, and myself typically deal with these. And again, we usually just wait for the monthly report, send out some letters. A lot of times it resolves itself. I mean, this is probably, I think with Jackie right now, I would say the one we're sending to court right now, or we're going for, actual court enforcement. Probably the first one we've had to do in many, many months. For the most part, they resolve themselves. And we always, if somebody did it, without knowing, I mean, if they've already committed to, rent their place out, there's a house on Lindbergh right now. They've already got 3 stays coming in the next several months. We take a screenshot of what those are. We get those dates. We don't say, hey, you need to cancel those. We try to work with people wherever we can. We just say, don't have any new rentals. And so usually that's why we get conformance, because we try to work with people as best as possible.
Mr. Traxler, the example that you just gave us where you said that you have referred it to Attorney Graves, they don't have a conditional use permit, correct?
That's correct. They We noticed it in our report that we get from the service. We notified them to cease immediately. They called me and said they're not going to, and they should be able to do so. And we sent another letter and tried to work with this individual, and I almost knew from my first phone contact with this person that it wasn't going to work. So unfortunately, we tried. They just believe they should be able to do so. And they do not live on this at this house.
So you would characterize most of the issues as off the books ones. We're not having these problems with the on the book.
We have not had,
If we had to jump
we've not
to
had a
some
single problem with one that's on the book. The problem is getting them on the books. That's absolutely fair characterization.
One question, if a person has a conditional use permit for a short-term vacation rental, and you get a complaint from their neighbor that says, there's been someone else in the home for 3 months, not just the 30 days, and it's not the owner, what are the steps that the city takes to try and remedy that or investigate that, or what measures are taken then?
The first thing we would do is we'd keep all of our complaints anonymous. So we would contact the property owner and speak with them. And if we need to, we could even monitor the site. We've had the same thing with illegal businesses. Occasionally, we do have to monitor. We get questions about lack of parking on public streets. It's not uncommon for staff to go by, but it really is difficult. You can't really park someone outside their house the entire time, but it's possible they have a vehicle that they're parking in the driveway. We can monitor that, and sometimes it makes it easier. But we haven't come across that. But that would be the only steps we could take.
So in the case of a neighbor complaining about either the length of stay or neighbors' noise complaints that maybe they didn't want to reach out to the police, it's pretty much he said, she said. It's pretty much going to be who do you believe? Is it the
Yes, that's pretty accurate, but it's kind of holds true for a lot of complaints unless you can actually go out and witness it yourself. A lot of times we have to try to take as much information as we can and try to come out with some of the facts. But we have to, if we're going to pursue a court action, the standards that the city attorney requires, we do need actual evidence or proof that there's a violation, or we can't forward it off. The service we do is phenomenal. Because I think I mentioned it earlier, we used to have to try to track these down, try to guess where it was. It was a nightmare. And the service, gives us the actual address and gives us the contact information. It's a little pricey, but it's absolutely worth it, because otherwise we'd probably have a lot more of these out there. I mentioned 4 or 5 illegal right now. We'd probably have 5 times that if we didn't have this service, because for the most part, we get compliance. And as we've said earlier, the ones that we have problems with did not go through the process.
by and large, the short-term vacation rental ordinance, as we have it written, seems to work for most of our community members.
From an enforcement standpoint, or just from an enforcement standpoint, it works. Yes. I haven't had many, I've had complaints, for the most part, most people want to put them in, multifamily, which is clearly going to cause problems for affordable housing. That's my biggest complaint I get. Probably I would say, why can't I do it in an apartment complex? I think the last time we talked about this, or I was at a meeting, I just had an individual try to rent out 3 apartments at the Sarah and Anna apartment complex, and he had no interest in living there. He was just going to rent those out to Airbnb, which takes it off the market for people that are looking for affordable housing. So that's probably the biggest complaint I get.
Yeah, that's by design too. When we crafted the original ordinance, I had talked to the mayor of Colorado Springs, Colorado, and huge investors came in and bought up a bunch of their commercial property and then turned it right over to Airbnb for the most part. And it sends a chill down your spine, in terms of housing. It's already tight here.
San Francisco was having a lot of problems at the time we crafted that ordinance. I think we were probably the first in the region. I did not know what Airbnb was when we had a resident, I believe it was a resident on Weaver that came in and championed the idea to the city.
Anything further?
Yeah, just briefly, and Anthony, this isn't a question for you, but more of just a statement. I appreciate the level of detail we're doing here. I appreciate that we've seen revisions of this. For me, though, I don't see a world in which I can be supportive of relaxing restrictions on short-term vacation rentals when we're in the midst of a housing crisis. And I understand that we're talking about single-family homes and how much the owner is or isn't on the property. I would much rather see our Public Works Department doing other priorities than monitoring who is renting what. I've not heard community support for this, broad or otherwise. I've not heard housing advocates suggest that affordable housing can be furthered by loosening restrictions on Airbnbs or short-term vacation rentals. So while I appreciate this discussion and the investigation we're doing, I can't support this and I won't be supporting any CUPs that come forward.
Any additional comment? All right, thank you. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.